In The War on the West, author Douglas Murray recalls a revealing moment on American television when, in 2021, the audience of The Tonight Show whooped and cheered in response to Jimmy Fallon's announcement that for the first time in American history, the number of white people in the United States had gone down. This applause was not awkward or uncertain, but loud and enthusiastic. It was, dare I say it, joyful. This should give all of us pause. To the extent that Western countries have historically been populated and are still predominantly inhabited by people with white skin, this event is indicative of something extraordinary. The degree to which Western self loathing has become both socially permissible and culturally celebrated. In any other context, celebrating the demographic decline of a majority population would be condemned as racist or even genocidal in nature. But in the contemporary West, it elicits laughter and cheers. In this video, I'd like to explore a question that has, quite honestly, puzzled me for years. Why have Western countries, some of the most prosperous, stable, and open in human history, seemingly turned on themselves? It's a question that and I suspect many others, have pondered for many years, not least because it seems so counterintuitive. How could the very societies that have produced freedom, affluence, and technological progress on an unprecedented scale now appear to regard their own histories, cultures, and majority populations with suspicion and contempt? Noteworthy here is that this video isn't an attempt to provide a definitive answer to that paradox. Rather, it's an invitation to jointly explore where this peculiar self hatred might have come from and why it seems to be a uniquely Western phenomenon. From a contemporary perspective, the self loathing of the West seems profoundly strange. These are, by almost any measure, some of the safest, freest, and most successful societies in history. If they were, in fact, as oppressive, exploitative, and systemically unjust as many of their critics appear to believe, one would expect people to flee from them rather than risk their lives to get into them. And yet, migration is almost entirely one way. People move to the West, not from it. And those who denounce Western societies rarely seem eager to live anywhere else, and certainly not in the socialist countries where many of the policies that so many critics of the West advocate have actually been put into practice. Conventional historical narratives in the West offer a deceptively simple answer to the question which is posed in this video: that Western nations are uniquely guilty, uniquely culpable for the sins of colonialism, slavery, and imperialism. That the West's material wealth was built upon exploitation, and its moral legitimacy forever tainted by it. But this explanation quickly collapses under the most modest of scrutiny. Across human history, empires have risen and fallen on every continent. The Middle Eastern slave trade predates and outlasted the Western one. The Japanese, Mongolian, and numerous other non Western empires left devastation in their wake. Pre Columbian civilizations in South America practiced human sacrifice on an almost unimaginably brutal scale. And in the 20th century alone, tens of millions perished under communist regimes in China, the Soviet Union, North Korea, Cambodia, and others, all outside of the so called Western world. In view of such examples, the idea that Western nations are uniquely evil, uniquely worthy of self loathing and contempt, is not just historically absurd, but morally nonsensical. None of this is to suggest that Western nations are flawless, or that their histories are unblemished, but to regard them as singularly guilty among nations, or to measure them against hypothetical political utopias, rather than societies and civilizations which have actually existed across space and time, is to abandon perspective entirely and suggests a pathology at the heart of such cultures. And yet, this is precisely what's happened. So if history doesn't fully explain it, where does this Western self-loathing come from? Why is it that only Western societies seem to harbour such deep resentment towards their own pasts, their own cultures, even in some cases, their own skin colour? One plausible explanation is education. Across schools and universities, generations of students have been taught to see Western civilization primarily through a lens of guilt and oppression, as a story of exploitation rather than achievement. But this alone can't be the origin, because those teachers, too, were once students. Somewhere further back lies the seed of the pathological self loathing that results in an inability or unwillingness to see anything good in our own traditions or in Western identity itself. There may also be, I suspect, a psychological dimension, a kind of guilt born of affluence. Having achieved levels of comfort and security unmatched in human history, Western societies appear to have turned inward, seeking meaning through self critique. When material suffering diminishes, existential anxiety rushes in to fill the void, and in that vacuum, guilt becomes a substitute for purpose. It's important to note that this isn't an academic question, but an existential one, because civilizations that no longer believe in their own moral worth, or worse, come to despise themselves, can hardly be expected to flourish. They become vulnerable, both to internal forces that would seek to destroy their foundations, and to external ones eager to exploit their confusion and weakness. History has not been kind to societies that lose faith in their own legitimacy. So I return to the question, why did Western countries turn on themselves? When and why did we decide that the civilization which abolished slavery, expanded civil rights, and built welfare systems for their citizens were uniquely oppressive, exploitative, and unjust? I don't know the answer to this, but I suspect that until we find the courage to ask, honestly and without fear, we're likely to continue this strange descent into self contempt. If you've come this far, I'm genuinely interested in your thoughts on this topic. Where do you think Western self loathing has ultimately come from? From guilt, affluence, ideology, or something else? Please share your perspective in the comments below, and if you'd like to jointly explore more of these sorts of topics, please consider subscribing to my channel.